Hi guys, today I'm going to talk to you about different types of sources. When we do research, we actually use 5 different types of sources: primary sources, secondary sources, tertiary sources, quantitative sources and qualitative sources. Primary sources are sources that are from the time and include things like and. Primary sources are really useful because they show you the perspective of what happened through the eyes of a person who was actually there. They can also provide you with a very specific example of what was happening at that particular time. A negative of primary sources, though, is that they're often biased because they're through the eyes of a particular person. What they see is what they tell you, and therefore they can't actually talk about what's happening across the entire country or across the entire world at that particular point in time, because all that they can see is what they see. Secondary sources are sources like these. And secondary sources are sources that come about from after the time. Sometimes they involve primary sources and they use evidence from primary sources, but most of the time they're actually just reflections on what actually happened. Secondary sources are useful because they remove the emotional bias that primary sources might have. However, they do look back in hindsight, which means that quite often they can be biased themselves, because if someone wasn't liked at the end of their reign, or if someone wasn't liked because of something that they did later in life, that can taint the information that is given in a secondary source. Tertiary sources actually combine primary and secondary sources, and these include things like and. Tertiary sources are useful because they combine both primary and secondary sources, so you get the eyewitness emotional accounts with the secondary sources, which give the reflection of what actually happened. Tertiary sources cannot be useful, however, because sometimes they're limited in the information that they're able to access, sometimes they're biased, and sometimes they're not completely up to date. Qualitative sources are sources such as and. Qualitative sources are sources where people talk or interact using information that's spoken or written. Qualitative sources can be useful because you can get the opinion of other people, as well as making sure that you are able to extend your questions in order to get answers all the way through. Qualitative sources can be limited, however, because they're very specific to the people who are either answering them or writing them. Quantitative sources are sources such as these. Quantitative sources can be useful because they can give you specific data on what is happening around the world or in a particular area. Quantitative sources are also useful because they can show you trends over time. Quantitative sources, however, do not have any emotion in them at all. Quantitative is just about the numbers. Hope this helps.